All right. Oh, hello. So I'm gonna clean out a candle. Why? Because I want to do some watercolor. Apparently, you're supposed to have two different water containers. You know, one clean, one dirty. It makes sense if you think about it. But um, this is what I usually use: a screwdriver. It sounds kind of weird, but it works. You don't, like, if you don't have one, which I'm assuming you do, because most people have screwdrivers. But if you don't, like, anything that's, like, pointy, so you can chisel out, like, the big chunks of wax that you can get, will work. Some paper towels, or just, like, a regular hand towel, I suppose, would work, too. And, I have Goo Gone. I recommend this stuff if you guys want to get rid of sticky things. But if you don't have this, isopropyl alcohol works as well, from what I've heard. But this stuff is pretty effective, so I'm going to use that. Anyway, let's get to it. So I do end up switching screwdrivers because this one was just a little too thick. But really all you're going to do is draw lines into the wax so you get these kind of big chunks that you can then pull out. Once you're done with that, you'll be left with really just the wick holder at the bottom and maybe some wax inside the jar. You're then going to spray Goo Gone and, really soak it for 15 to 20 minutes. I ended up spraying it twice. When I came back, I applied a healthy amount of elbow grease. This is probably not the easiest way to do this, just going to be honest. I'm not very smart, though, so this is the way I'm doing it. But I did eventually get that little wick holder out. Like I said, it took quite an amount of elbow grease. But once you do get that out, it's really just a matter of scrubbing it clean. And now I have a nice pink jar. So now time for the fun part. Actually working on an illustration. I'm going to be using this Winsor & Newton Cotman pen palette, 12 pan palette. I've messed around with it a little bit, as is evident by the fact that it's kind of a mess. However, I really don't know how to use watercolors. I still don't really know what I'm doing. This piece was a bit of an experience, truth be told. But I've had this idea rattling around in my brain for a while now about this little frog, which I've lovingly named Marco. I don't know why, but his name is Marco, if you're curious. In a fairy tale-esque book kind of illustration, leaving a lot of negative space up in that upper left-hand corner for some text that I will add later on. But anyway, I am getting ready to add the color, and I think I hesitate quite a lot here because I really wasn't sure what to do or where to start. I'm not very confident with watercolors at all, but I do and eventually end up starting with the frog, using this nice bright green that the Winsor & Newton Cotman palette already has. I started adding color to the frog, and I will say I was pretty nervous about this the entire time. I think I have a problem where I don't actually pick up enough color or enough water, and I end up having to go back and forth quite a lot to the palette and picking up more color. But I do actually really love how the frog came out. I think he came out really well, and I very much enjoyed actually the experience of using the watercolors. They blend really nicely, which, obviously they blend really nicely, they're watercolors. But my previous experience was only with, cheap pans that you get from, Walmart, so not great. But I have really been enjoying these Winsor & Newton Cotman colors. They aren't chalky, which is good, and they're just really pretty. But yeah, I ended up finishing the frog pretty easily. Finishing the flat colors, I should say, pretty easily. and I started adding some shadows to like the bottom and the feet, but I really wanted him to kind of pop and be the focal point of the entire piece. So I very much tried to keep these colors nice and bright. This is me going back and forth over the piece. Way too much. I have a problem where I really try to overblend watercolors, I think. It is something I think I started getting better at as this piece progresses, but still something I need to work on. Just going to add some more green to his little foot in the back, because he does have a little foot in the back, and they're very cute feet, if I do say so myself. I'm sorry, I really love him. He's my favorite. He's so cute. I've had this little frog character kind of in my brain since high school, which was several years ago at this point. And I'm really glad I feel confident enough now to work on my art and like actually do finished pieces like this one, even if it does take me forever. Yeah, this is me overworking it yet again. I'm not really sure what I was trying to accomplish here. I think there were some lines or like color that just really wasn't blending very well. So after I laid that flat color down on the frog, I blended a green and a brown together to get this sort of muted green for the cattails over to the side here, and quickly put in sort of a flat base for them as well. I'm trying to learn not to like overwork a piece, especially if it's still wet, because like it just ends up getting a little mucky looking. So I was kind of jumping around from one thing to the next and working on things kind of in a weird order, but I really like the idea of these cattails, so I ended up keeping them in the illustration, and I think that they come out pretty good. They do look really pale right now, but I promise I go back and add color later. I was trying to add some shadows again. I think I try too hard to work on a piece and it's still wet and it doesn't work. So I ended up switching over to this tree branch that's meant to frame the piece in, that I wanted kind of going over the frog to fill up some space here. Now this is the part that I really loved, and it's something that I was kind of working on, is like really using the brush to add texture, which was what I was doing with those leaves. I will go back to those later, but like I said, I was kind of jumping around, and I'm back on the frog because the frog isn't finished yet. I ended up adding some more shadows, trying to deepen those colors a little bit, and I think I added some yellow just to give him a little bit of a unique kind of gradient and a unique color in comparison to the rest of the green that is in the piece, because this piece is very green. But I had a lot of trouble with his feet. I kept having this issue where I would blend out the color, so I wasn't getting the shadows that I wanted, I wasn't getting the definition that I wanted. I think I eventually kind of gave up and went on to something else and came back later to try and fix his feet. But yeah, I was struggling with his feet. I think also partially because I refuse to use like more than one brush, and I really need to start using, you know, the appropriately sized brushes. So this is where I start thinking about putting the sky in, and I started with a dry paper and it really wasn't working. As you can see, like the watercolor really wasn't like moving around as much as I wanted it to. So I end up going and grabbing some like water, just clean water, and kind of soaking the page here, which really helped me blend out this sky and get that sky down. And I think I learned something. You can put water on the page and it works a lot better. But yeah, so I end up putting the sky in. I think this is all I do with the sky. I don't really add any more detail to the sky rather than just this quick wash of blue, because it really wasn't supposed to be a focal point or anything. I ended up stopping over there because I forgot that I was going to put something in the background there. I go back to the leaves of the tree trying to get those in. And this is kind of where I started realizing that, like, oh, watercolor goes over watercolor fairly easily. Like, it's not, you know, impossible to put, different layers on and have it look okay. It can kind of go over itself. But I had a lot of fun with this tree, especially the leaves. I was kind of using that like crisscross Bob Ross kind of technique, and I really enjoy the way that tree came out. Now here is the part where I add trees. I did not like these. I had a really bad time putting those in, and I got really annoyed with them, so that's why I kind of cut that out. They do look gross, and I promise that they get better, but I almost gave up because I really hated it. So I went back to the tree, because I love the tree. I had a lot of fun adding that texture in with the brush. Now for the fun part, adding the rest of the background in. So I made this sort of turquoisey blue color for the water. I wanted it to be more on like the greenish blue side, and I had a lot of fun kind of putting this in too. It was fairly easily done. Especially, I was very nervous about going around the different like things that were already in the piece, like the cattails and the frog, because I was worried that if I accidentally got like watercolor, like this bluish color on them, I would mess it up. And I started realizing, oh, you can kind of erase watercolor by going back over it with water, which, makes sense, but I'm not that smart. I really should watch someone actually do watercolor, but, where's the fun in that? I just want to play. So I'm adding sort of like crisscrossy motions. I could not get that side to really match this side very well, which is a bit of a bummer. I don't know why, but I just could not get the same sort of texture. However, I am quite pleased with the way this water turned out. It is very simple. There's no like reflections or anything. But my thoughts are, it's like a swamp. So swamp water is kind of nasty. It doesn't really move. It's very stagnant. So I think we can have like this fairly still water, if it's supposed to be in like a swamp. So I think I was trying to add the crown here, which I actually was a little nervous about because I messed up with the trees. And I added the yellow, and then I started adding this green because I was trying to get this fade from the trees to the water to make it have like an actual basis. I think it actually worked pretty well. I ended up dragging it down a little bit to kind of get a reflection in the water, and I think that worked. But I ended up letting it sit and went back to the cattails. And then we add the trees. Now, this is the part that I was actually really relieved by. I had this idea for like the background just being kind of like a clump of trees, especially those really small, skinny ones. And I've seen some like fairy tale book kind of illustrations where they have these really skinny looking trees in the background. So I wanted to add those, and I kept going back and forth trying to add those in and really fix that mess. And I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. I was not pleased with the blob of brown that was there. It was actually the one part of the piece that I almost thought that I wasn't going to be able to fix it, but I'm pleased with how it turned out. And now I am just adding in the rest of the colors, the rest of the different pieces, like this lily pad for instance. And I finished up the shading on the cattails. Really, this is just like the last couple of steps. The lily pad, it took me a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, mostly because I was just trying to maneuver around that frog. But honestly, it's a very simple little flat wash of color. After that, I picked up this graphite pencil. This is a water-soluble graphite pencil because I do not have gray or black, so I chose to use this for the eyeballs of the frog. And I think it worked out okay, although I will say I made a mistake. I think I tried going in and adding some color to the crown, and I did not wait long enough for the eyes to finish drying. So I had a little bit of bleeding. Yeah, you can see me kind of go here, and I messed it up. Eventually, I ended up just taking another brush and kind of soaking up the liquid that was there. But anyway, the final touch, I decided to add some line work because while I was kind of happy with the watercolor, I figured adding some line work would really make it pop and really make it look very much like that kind of illustration style that I was going for. And I do think it helped. I started with really thin lines, which is kind of a thing that I do. I don't know why. I just start with thin lines, and if I want to thicken them up, I might go back over it later. And in this case, I do. I believe that I thickened up the lines along the edges of the frog, but I also took the tape off because not being able to move the piece was really frustrating. So here's me going and speeding along with this line work, which was actually more nerve-wracking than the rest of the piece combined because I was really happy with how it looked. Putting this line work down was a bit of a challenge just because I didn't want to ruin it. But I think it really helped the piece kind of come together. And I actually really enjoyed it because I have been playing with pens a lot more frequently lately, so I kind of am playing with some different techniques like stippling and hatching and breaking up my lines so that they're not complete, to really give certain effects or textures, I suppose. Over here, I kind of texture this branch and texture these leaves with just some more scribbly lines, which I still love this tree. I think I've said it a few times now, but I really love this tree. I know it's just a blob, but it makes me happy. I really enjoy the different colors. If you sit there and stare at it long enough, you can see different colors. But yeah, there's the texture that I added to the branch, and then I went back and I kind of added this line to the center of the lily pad. And then I decided to add some more details to the frog and the cattails, just to kind of make them feel a little bit more finished. I kind of contemplated a while just whether or not I wanted to add some shading with the pen. Again, I was really nervous about ruining the piece at this point. I added some highlights with a little gel pen, just to make him very cute. I love this frog too. And then I did end up going and adding some shading with the pen, just some simple hatching in certain places to really make it fit in with the rest of the piece at this point. I did kind of mess up around the lip there. I didn't like what I did, and I think that's what made me go back and really start thickening up the lines. Added some shadows to the lily pad, and I think we're basically finished at this point. Yeah, that's the end of the piece. I do think I thickened up the lines on the frog off camera, but I am really happy with the way this piece turned out. It was a bit of a wild ride, especially there were definitely parts that I was a little bit less enthused about, but I'm very happy with how this came out, and now time for the final reveal. Silly little frog, too busy looking to the sky to realize your queen has already passed you by. I'm not much of a poet, but I've had this poem and this idea kind of in my head for a while, and I'm very happy that I've actually managed to get it out on paper. I've also, of course, kept a wordless version. I'm very happy with how this piece came out, and I've got more to learn, but I'm getting there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. See you next time, I suppose.